Well, hello, ladies. How are you doing today?
We are wonderful. Emily, how are you?
Fabulous. Oh, I'm fabulous.
You know, I think we have a really special guest today, a very special guest that I am just over the moon excited to have. And Jay, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about him because I'm not even going to say his name yet.
Oh, it's like, Richard, I'll warn you, you're like her news anchor crush. So I'm
I
sorry.
know I do have, sorry, I've not been stalking you a lot, but I mean, you, Bruce Perry, Gabor Mate, it's fine.
Yeah, that's okay. So today we have Richard Louie, and he is an American news anchor for NBC and MSNBC. He's a journalist, a published author, and a speaker. His work and reporting on humanitarian issues spans 30 years and 6 continents. He's not that old, though. Richard has brought caregiving to the forefront of the film industry with his 2 Academy Award qualified films, Sky Blossom in 2020 and Unconditional in 2023, which was screened at the White House by First Lady Jill Biden. If you haven't seen those guys, you've got to watch them. But he joins us today because we all share something in common. We are all caregivers. And Richard wrote, "Caring for my dad has been a constant test of my selfless muscles." I think that all caregivers are superheroes. We are like weightlifters, Richard. So thank you so much for being here with us. We're so excited to have you.
Back Elliott sisters in the house. I love
That's
it.
right. We're so excited.
Look out, Richard. You're in for something.
I know.
Yeah.
I feel like, Richard, how many sisters do you have? Because I know you have siblings. Okay, so you have one sister, younger or older?
One younger sister and 2 older brothers.
Oh, so you're in the middle.
So you're basically the middle. So we're gonna align.
That's right. So imagine Emily times 5.
Oh,
That's my little sister. I'm joking, Emily.
It could be 5 of me.
So, Richard, there is so much when we started unpacking. We did our research. We were like, oh, my goodness, because your history, you have a book, you have 2 films, you have caregiving of your dad, and now your mom. So we were trying to unpack it all and get the timeline set. So then we were like, we're just going to ask Richard. It's kind of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
True.
So get us started. First, Natalie always says, you were born, and then
skip to the good part.
Yeah. So, so tell us kind of what got you on this path of not knowing that you were a caregiver when you really were.
You know, I was thinking about the title of your series and your pod, and I really drilled down into the word confessions, because for a lot of us that brings up a lot of things in general, depending what your background is. And I guess my confession would be, I never thought that as of today that I would be the best human that I've ever been because of some of the worst things I've ever been through. And I think, 8 years ago, when I realized that my dad was going to need help, and there's no way I was not going to help him, was the beginning of that journey. And, I call caregivers astronauts. Once you're an astronaut, you're always an astronaut. You come back from the moon and you always have the title astronaut, right?
Yes.
You never lose that. As a caregiver, and the 3 of you know this very well, there's something that's been put in you after you've gone through it and are going through it that never leaves you. So the best human I've ever been is also knowing that I have so much more to learn, because I've been given certain muscles, as we were alluding to in earlier conversations, that there's no way I'm going to stop using them. Yeah. So to say where I'm at today might tell us where I came from. Yeah. And that is my confession.
Yeah. Like that.
I do too. So I know that I know that your dad is one of 13. So I was like, that's a lot of kids.
I can't even count that high.
No kidding. Like, I don't even know. Like, at some point his mom had to be just like, forget it, just whatever, whoever, whatever. But I think the thing that really got me, because we watched the documentaries, which were tough to watch.
Thank you.
It's interesting because exactly. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. It takes time. Yep.
It does. But I mean, I'll say this. My husband couldn't watch it. My husband, who's the cancer survivor, couldn't watch it because it was so close to him, even though we're a year out. And he's kind of to be able to see that, because I had wanted him to see it, because I wanted him to kind of get a sense of how I felt. And as a caregiver, you can't really ever complain more. Like, our mom has Parkinson's. Like, it's hard to complain to our mom. Like, you know, how she may call and be like, how are you feeling? And we're like, oh, I don't feel great. Well, I have Parkinson's. All right, well, you win. You're winning. No worries. So,
and from what you said, your mom is one of those that's not talking about herself on top of that.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Tune in for the next episode on the podcast.
Exactly. So your dad was a pastor and a social worker, which I'm a social worker. I love that. And it sounds to me like, and your mom was a teacher. Your parents had servant hearts. And I feel like that's been ingrained in you. Like, if you think about it as your childhood, you're used to helping others. And would you say that's a true thing, that carried over, that servant gene kind of is in you?
I don't know. You know, it's, I don't know if the gene's there, but I would say, I felt like I was, in a very good way, quietly brainwashed, because, here they were working so hard. You know, my dad being a pastor, he couldn't make money. He really wanted to, after he left seminary, to go back to the church and be a youth pastor. And, you know, he's starting to, you know, kick out some kids, and there's no way he was making the ledger balance. Right. And so he had to leave, and, you know, becoming a social worker, the next lowest paying job that he could ever get in the world, especially in the 1970s and 1960s. And my mother too, picking, you know, I'm glad teachers are getting more. They should be paid. Excuse me. They should be paid more now. But my mom was we were at poverty level wages. And I remember my dad told me the story of, you know, he was GA, social worker. So he worked for the city and county of San Francisco. So if you didn't have a home, you'd walk into GA, you'd walk through the front doors of the city and county of San Francisco social department, social services department, and you'd see my dad. You'd sign up, you'd come and you'd sit down next to him. And my dad would ask you questions about where you are and what you need. And often it would be giving you some assistance immediately, maybe an emergency shelter, what have you. And I remember him telling me the story of him having to get in the same line to get food stamps for us. And I didn't really process it until later, going, well, what were you doing? I mean, you can't even take care of your kids, your family. Mom is nobly staying with us to raise the 4 kids. And you've got to get in line. You're embarrassed, and you have to go with your coworker, because you can't go and get them yourself. You have to, apply through your coworker. And there he was. And I don't know if I've fully processed it as of today, and that's okay. But they were giving and giving and making no money. And we suffered for it in many ways, going to bed hungry, things like that, which shouldn't happen in America. But I was grateful in one way, in that I think in the back of my brain, and so I said I'm saying it in a positive way. It was a quiet witnessing, a quiet ingraining and brainwashing, and I mean it in a positive way,
right?
Of what you got to do if you think it's the right thing to do. And we have all sorts of examples. I know the 3 of you have that in your family too, of those who are so giving, but still able to take care of themselves and those around them, but to a limit where you kind of scratch your head and go, you could have done something different.
Does it ever, and this is a personal question, you can be like, decline. Do you ever get a little frustrated do you ever get frustrated about the fact that you were put into this place? You're put in this position. Like, it kind of goes back to what you said. Like, if you had chosen to do something different, why am I responsible for you? I'm the child. Why am I responsible for you? Like, I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask for this. I mean, and there's a lot of people and we've interviewed lots of people now.
Yeah.
And they will talk about their siblings, or they will talk about, especially you'll have siblings who are just like, not doing it. Not doing it.
Yep.
You do it. And then it creates such tension. But a little bit, you ever feel like you like your money back a little bit? Because I'm gonna tell you, there's every now and then I'm like, I kind of like my money back. I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do have siblings that totally checked out during the caregiving journey. And there's a lot of lessons which we can talk about later on, which I know the three of you have had in your series, and between each other for that matter, probably, because it's okay. It's the way it works, right? We're all different. I don't know if I wanted my money back. I would say that I was. I always felt like this is really, really difficult, but that I got to make something good out of it. And I was looking for the things in my tool chest, whatever it was, that I could pull out to use to make it better. And now the better doesn't mean it was perfect better or perfect good. It was just better. It was just, this is the way it is. And I think it's not only the chemicals we were born with, as the three of you know so well. It's not only the luck that we have of the lottery of what we've learned and what we've encountered. It's also the choices that we've made. And I think some earlier choices in life helped me during the difficult periods when we were like, it was life and death for my father. Or we thought the decisions were life and death. And it wasn't that I was removed emotionally. It was that I knew for that moment, emotion could still be there, but I was going to put it here so that I could get through to help my dad the best way that I could. And so the difficulty, and three of you know this, is that I believe looking back, and there's a lot in front of me, I know that, but looking back is that it was, I guess I'm learning what it means to be alive, right? And that's tough, because when you're in your 20s and your teens and as you grow older, we all have different levels of learning what it means to be alive. Because learning to be alive also means what it means to die. And in that whole arc, I think we're driven naturally, because that's why we try to stay alive, is to want to stay alive. On the flip side, I think we, on our great day of anything can happen, anything you can do, we all can do it. They tell us, right? Is that we think we can stay alive and healthy for our entire lives. We're not built like that. We're just not built that way. So if the lesson I learned through that difficulty, wanting to get my money back, because now I don't want it back. Even if I did want it back, I don't want it back now, because that was a lesson well paid for. Because I hope in the journey in front that now I know what it means to be alive, that I will do better in the days in front. Because if I never learned, then I'd be out having Popeye's fried chicken every day.
Well, it's like when you know better, you have to do better.
Yes.
True. Very true.
So Popeye's fried chicken every other day.
Okay. So
Perfect.
there's another confession. Richard's addicted to Popeye's fried chicken.
I am.
It's good to know.
I feel like I have Popeyes. You can also sponsor us. Thank you.
Hello, Popeyes.
Hi, Popeyes. We don't talk about.
So, Richard, you said that you went in and you talked to your human resources, I guess your boss, and at that you have made a lot of great decisions. Like your career has been phenomenal. You've grown, you've done, you've been on lots of stations, you've been a great journalist. You still are a great journalist, Richard.
I like how she said you've been a great journalist. Hi, Richard.
You are a great
Thank
journalist,
you.
Richard.
It was such a good run.
Yeah. So
Nice knowing you.
But you go in and you said something. You said it. I feel like no matter what she responded, because you wanted to figure out a way to make it work, it was still something that you were going to do. What in your mind, like what gives you that? Is that a cultural decision? Like I'm just going to do it. I mean, because we talk about culture a lot and the impact that it plays, because some people do just step out. It's not in their culture. It's not, is it a family thing where your family says, nope, we're all going to take care of each other? And
this is what we do.
Yeah. Because you stepped out of your career, sort of, and then you got another career. So
yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, JJ, when we look at this, I didn't know at the time what, because I use the analogy of muscles a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because as you build up muscles, what happens is that you react to situations because you've built in the muscle memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the situation when my dad was diagnosed and I knew where it was going to go, because I did some research, 7 years since to diagnosis to death. And I was like, heck, well, I'm not going to miss, I'm going to try to be part of that, all of that. Right. And I knew my career was going to mean I wouldn't. And I knew my mother would need the help. I don't know. I would say everything's cultural, but sometimes it's cultural personally. It's cultural familially. It's culture geographically. It's cultural by your very background. And I would say that for me, culturally, it was, my dad had always stood up for me. When they changed my English teacher when I was in 3rd grade or something. And I told my dad, I said, this new English teacher sucks. Sorry. And
that's not beep worthy.
Yeah, I paraphrase. But he said, okay, I'm going in, I'm gonna take the morning off and I'm going to go in and talk to the principal. And he went in and I got switched back to my English teacher. When I was getting bullied as a little kid, because I was shorter than most kids, smaller than most kids in the schoolyard, I told my dad always tucked me in at night. And I said, I don't know how I would ask the question, but I said, well, I'm kind of getting kicked around a bit. Smaller than the other kids. And he said, well, do you want to fight back or not? I said, I don't know. Fighting's just not my, I don't know. Yeah, 3rd grade. And so 2 nights later, he asked me, I said, did you think about it? And I was like, yeah, I think I better try to defend myself. I think I better fight back. So my dad goes, all right, I got the solution. I've been working out the last 2 days. There is a monk from the Shaolin Temple that just joined the church, and you're going to learn some kung fu. And I was like, oh,
that's awesome.
I love your dad already.
I was already beaten up because I was a little kid. Now you're going to add in the race thing too? Come on, bring it on, right? Yeah, that's perfect, right? Dad, what are you? Are you culturally insensitive to what a little kid goes through when they're in elementary school? Did you see this face?
Yeah.
But he really did do that. I really did learn it for a while, and I really did build up some confidence. I never had to have a fight, but I definitely built up the confidence. And so the analogy I use is when I knew that he was going to need somebody to help him because he could no longer fight for himself, I had to fight for him because he taught me how to defend and fight for myself. So that's when I had to be there for him. And so when I walked into the boss and I was like, oh, this could be it. I was like, you know what? I've done a lot of zigging while other people have zagged up to that point. Done a lot of things that are atypical of what you would think is a right thing to do. And so I was open to the fact that she might tell me, you're a nice guy, Richard. When you're done taking care of your dad, come on back. Let us know. We'll see if there's a fit. Instead, she said she's a very professional journalist, and she's got a great resume. And I expect her to tell me that. She lowered her glasses. She looked at me and she said, I'm taking care of my mom long distance as well in Florida from New York. And that was truly an amazing thing. Did I lose you?
Nope.
Nope, we're here.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want her to hear us.
Oh, okay.
For all of those who are listening to this, there was somebody who walked behind Richard, and so now we're just making faces. And but I think, you know what? Then it's almost like, of course you would take care of you. Daddy took care of you. Like, it's like, it feels very, but the fact that you, no,
I don't think so. I mean, some might say if you're going to fight for, there's many cases where you don't, but you know, whether it's that way or this way on that one, Natalie, I'm fine, because those who choose they don't, which I did have a sibling and do have a sibling who, and have had siblings that, you know, come and go based on what's better for them. I accept that. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'd say, I don't expect everybody to do it. In the beginning, I did expect my sibling to do it. And when that sibling didn't, I was a little upset.
I could see that though. But the thing that we've found is not everybody's meant to be a caregiver.
Yes, for sure.
And I'm going to tell you, there's some people that are good at it and some people that are probably just should go pick up the groceries for the other people.
I
They have
agree.
other strengths.
Because here's the thing. All three of us have our strengths. All three of us have our strengths. And so related to my husband, it was a different feel related to our mom. And we know our strengths. JJ being the oldest, always in charge. And Emily is a true nurturer, always care, said she raised her hand. She totally did it. And then me, I'm just like, let me know where, how do I plug in? Because it's all about relationship, and relationships are hard. So they are.
Yes, totally agree.
So I want to go back for a second, because I jumped off for a sec, back to your boss, because this is a thing that's not discussed a lot. The fact that you didn't even know that your boss herself was a long distance caregiver.
No. Look, I think there's a great opportunity to, and we're in a different space than we were in 2019, to talk about caregiving at work. And I reflect on what Yvette Miley did for me that day when she said, let's figure out how to make it work, Richard. Let's come up with 4 ideas. Each of you come up with 4, I'll come up with 4. Let's meet again in a week. She broke out her reporter's notebook. We have little notebooks that we take in the field and we're reporting. She started writing down 4 ideas right in front of me. And that, I thought, was, she didn't know what I was coming to talk about, but that was her heart talking to her. Her brain was talking, and brain may have said what I already said. Great guy. Let me know when you're done. And I think there's an opportunity for us to consider, and we learned it in the last 3 years, whether we decide to bury it or whether we try to forget it because we think before, because we're trying to get back to what it was before. But no, what was before is before. What is the future is the future. And what we learned in the last 3 years were some amazing things at work. And we can't throw it all away. We want to. We think that it was uncomfortable, but it was. And just like caregivers go through uncomfortable periods and then they reflect back on that discomfort, they realize they learned something, they're better because of it. I think business is going through that phase of looking back and going, hey, we were better because of that. And one of those things that was better that came out of Yvette's example is that she was creatively kind. There are no anchors at work part-time. There are no anchors that work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There are anchors that work 8 days a week, as I always say. You're always on call. And she said I could do that. It's been like 7 years that I've been working this shift now. And now that I care for my mom, it works out quite well. Now that I pursue these other projects that we talked about, it works out quite well. So I think and I hope that we spend some time to reflect our at-work opportunities and our at-work lessons, because it's those things. Bringing a caregiving ERG, I was just over at Meta the other day, and their caregiving ERG, which was just started 4 years ago, because the person who started it, a millennial, had to fly back from New York to California as well to take care of her dad. And it now has 4,000 members.
Wow.
Wow.
And I was like, You see, but that's the point. We also misunderstand that it affects all generations, all ages.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Right? 5 million children today, 17 and younger, are family caregivers. No training, no pay. 3 of you, family caregivers, no training, no pay.
That's right.
We don't want the money, but we also know that it's financially difficult. We want the training, but where do you get the training? And so then begins the isolation. But I do think that our industrial complex, whatever you want to call it, is, I hope, waking up. Because if it's worth $600 billion a year, if there are almost 60 million of us in this country, and there's the most popular job in the world, in the country right now, is retail worker, which is about 5 or 6 million people. There are 10 times more of us doing this job. But you use the word caregiver. I was looking at, so one of the subjects from the first film, her name's Rocio, and Brian Alvarado with Rihanna, their daughter.
Yes.
And I was looking at her handle because Brian is now facing a very difficult time with 3 different cancers. And it came back, and it was already difficult in him to begin with. So I wanted to make sure, make sure she's okay with whatever, we can do to help. And I notice now she says, loving spouse and caregiver. And I remember when I sat down with her 6 years ago, I think to first interview them, she was like, what's a caregiver? I'm not a caregiver. I'm a loving spouse, loving daughters,
right?
Loving spouse, right?
Right.
And there was a part of me that said, this is why the films were done, the book was done, is that's a step in our long journey of accepting what we are and what we're doing. And that's why when you bring up my boss, that was the start of me understanding what I am so that I can do these things to help others. Like even she, I don't think identified as a caregiver.
We don't.
That's, yeah.
But
Most
why
people
would?
don't.
Because we know our roles. Like we're daughters, we're wives, we're, whether it's husbands, whoever. I mean, your mom was wife, if you think about it.
Yep.
And then she was wife and caregiver, and she's serving dual roles at the same time. And that was the hardest thing for me to kind of figure out. Number one, I never realized I was a caregiver until my husband. So when we'd been working with our mom our dad passed away 12 years ago. So 11 years, I did not self-report as a caregiver, self-identify. Then I realized Jason is, and it's like this whole
yeah.
And I mean, I've been caring for other people's children professionally for years. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then I'm like telling the sisters, and I'm like, hey, I think I'm a caregiver. And we're like, we all are.
Surprise.
And then we come to the realization that I can be both. And how do you do both? And that is the hardest thing. And Emily experienced a lot. I think we all experienced, whether it's with our mom, how do we have those dual relationships? I want to be the daughter. Most days with my husband and with my mom, I just want to be your daughter. I don't want to have to be having these conversations with you. I don't want to I want you to have voice and choice. I want you to feel like you have dignity and that you have control, when we know that that's hard as you age.
I think the concept, and it's difficult, the way we think and see things, taking a step back and putting on sort of like my media experience hat, is we love to put things in certain categories. And we forget that you can be 100% a spouse and 100% a caregiver and 100% an Olympic athlete. We say, oh, then you must be 30, 30, 30. It's like a lot with mixed race folks. Oh, so you're 50, 50. No, you can be the same. When you walk through that door, and it's not for any of us to judge whether you're going to walk into the 100% X or 100% Y. It's just to accept whatever you're about to tell me who you are, Natalie. Today, you might be 100% spouse. You might be 100% woman. You might be 100% 5'8". Yeah. And I got to step back and immediately try to put you into, oh, so she's going to be these things. And as caregivers, we do that to ourselves, especially in this construct of today, saying everybody has to be this or that, when really you can be 500%.
America is the land of the free because of the brave. Norwegian Cruise Line never takes that for granted and is proud to support our troops with a discount program for members of the U.S. military, veterans, reservists, and their spouses. Service members get 10% off their cruise fare, where they'll be met with exclusive onboard experiences as a token of appreciation. NCL's Military Appreciation Program was created for veterans by veterans. Learn more about their military discount and program at ncl.com/military. That's ncl.com/military.
Yeah. So I want to make sure, Richard, because I'm curious, what got you to the film Sky Blossom? Because it is about a younger generation.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. When I watched it, I was like, okay, I know he's a caregiver and it's military. What got you there? Like, what was your impetus? We always say it's a fire. Like when you start a project like that, something, you got a fire in you that does that. Tell me about that.
Was it a square peg round hole kind of thing where you kind of like, oh, this is Richard, this is the film?
Well, it's just, he doesn't, I
think it was more of like, you say that you're caregiving at this point, you're going back and forth. So you really don't have a lot of free time. You're doing that cute thing called your job, 100%. So you're just doing 100% in 3 days and, or whatever. But then you think, I should do something more about this. Let's add some more, like burning the candle at both ends. And like you added a third candle to melt you found another way. You did more. So what made you think, I want to tell everybody and their brother about this? And
a lot of things at once. I would say one, which I've described earlier, we got a cultural gap. We're missing people like the four of us. We're not talking about it. It's always been kind of the ho-hum of life. That's all negative. But we all know that there's a lot of ho-hum and tough stuff in there. But there's a lot of great stuff too. And I think we forget, going back to Rocio, she is more in love than ever. My mom fell back in love with my dad. So that's a gap. And I said, well, given what I do every day here, how can I change that? And I thought the silver screen, where we go to, and still today even, we love the big screen. The big screen is one of our major cultural barometers. And so I was going to put these families up there. You're worth it up on that big wall. We're going to get you into AMC theaters across the country. We're going to say caregiving counts. And so that was my goal. That was one input. The other input was I sat down with Senator Elizabeth Dole, who I was an ambassador with, and talk about servant leadership and talk about, whatever she says you do. If you know her story, she was sitting at Walter Reed with Senator Bob, and they were going in. She was his primary caregiver. And she saw these younger couples coming in, and she was like, Bob, I've been with you for decades, and how are they dealing with this? And you and we're doing okay. But these are young folks. We know they're not getting a lot of help, and I know we're not getting necessarily the best help all the time. We got to help them. So when she started Hidden Heroes, and then I came on to help as a volunteer, that was the other input as to why I wanted to talk about military families, because her focus is on military caregivers. And having 6 uncles who had served, but they never talked about it, it was part of my journey too, to say, we all give to this country in different ways. And I don't want any uncles not to feel comfortable, or for whatever reason, and you probably have members in your family that don't talk about their service,
right?
To say it's okay. Like it's very important. that we accept that and then we hold it up to what it is. So that was the other input as to why I wanted to do a film. And then the third input was, if we can talk about young caregivers, then we break down a major wall of what we think is just one group. Because we think it is the sandwich generation, right? That's them. In reality, we're all doing it. And then when COVID came around, we realized we're all doing this. And when I look back at those three major inputs as to why we did Sky Blossom, to focus on 5 children taking care of their family, grandparents or parents, is to show that this is really, truly all of us that are doing it. Mm-hmm. And as you notice, I focused on 5 different regions: Midwest, South, East, West, Pacific Islands. I included every major ethnic group in America. Yes. But you notice in the film, I wasn't like, oh, and here you go. Here's our Midwestern family, and here's our Southern family. And here's... No, I just said these are 5 families. Mm-hmm. And in a time of division, I knew that there was a way of bringing things together without saying you got it. Yvette taught me this. Show, don't say. Don't tell. Show, don't tell. And I hope we showed in Sky Blossom how caregiving is all of us. And what I've noticed is it really does tear down differences.
It very much does. That because mm-hmm. I always say caregiving is the most inclusive. It is, yeah. It respects all diversity. It is, everybody is allowed to have at it. And that's the thing, that's the uniqueness. And I think ever since I recognized that I was a caregiver, I mean, I don't know a stranger anyway, and I make friends everywhere, but caregiving now just...
I've read about that.
Yeah. I mean, technically yeah. Make besties on the airplane. And so thank you, American Airlines. But I think it's one of those things where it's like, I haven't not met a person who isn't a caregiver, has a caregiver story, whether it's now in the past, it's now, or they're planning for it, or they see it coming. And I think that is the piece that does bring us all. It brings the playing field all together, regardless of complex health, disabilities, chronic health, aging, doesn't matter. I care. And all the feelings and thoughts and emotions are very similar. The hard, the good, the wins, the losses, the times that you cry by yourself when it feels hard.
Yeah. Or with others.
Yeah. Or yeah. And that's a privilege. I don't think people realize caregivers when they share the parts that are really inside of them, because there's a fear of rejection. There's a fear of shame and like, I shouldn't feel this way. When you share with somebody else, when a caregiver shares their thoughts and feelings with you, that is a privilege. For me, I think that's a privilege because it is people could judge you and feel like, why are you being such a not kind person? Your husband has it worse, or your mom has it worse. You have a pretty privileged life. And so I think that's a message to share with others.
It's a huge moment of vulnerability.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
And, a person that well, all 3 of you, Rosalind Carter, I was down there for her 96th birthday and drove by their house, and now they live together in the same room, and it's really sweet. Every morning they get up and they kiss each other. Rosalind Carter, as says there are 4 types of people. You've heard it. We're a caregiver, are a caregiver, receiving caregiving, or will be a caregiver. And when she started that idea of mental health and caregiving 40 years ago, when she was poking her husband candidate in the side by saying, "What are you going to do, Mr. Candidate, about mental health and caregiving?" That said a lot about who she is. And it takes these leaders like Rosalind Carter and Elizabeth Dole and others to push us to remind it's in the fabric, as you were saying. And what isn't that just the best? I mean, I can talk for a long time about why it makes why it's the right thing to focus on. But, culturally, isn't it great to talk about caring for other people? Isn't that super? In a way that's really tangible? Because I think we're forgetting about that. I think we're forgetting about how like the three of you, we all have watched the movies and done our history lessons, civics courses, is that we had a great period of being just known for being the caring country. We were the country that went around the world, right? We were prudent. And I want us to be that, if there's something that's great about us all being caregivers or part of that dynamic, that's certainly one reason. And then I think if you're a business, it makes a lot of sense. What industry has immediately built in emotional branding? Built in. You say the word caregiving, we're all in. Our heart's there. You can talk about shoes. There's some emotional branding, right? There's some of that. I think the closest would be the military. But on the business side, and you can tell what I'm trying to do is, for all of your listeners that are involved in business, is that this is a ripe industry.
Yes.
Because you get heart, and heart brings immediate brand association, immediate brand tying and coupling, which is so expensive to get.
I would absolutely agree with that. There's so much that we want businesses to do. And I think it's the time is now to step up. When you talk about being socially responsible and we want to care for others, here's a thought. Care for your own who are caring for others. Whether you are in human services, in human service industry, we care for others, but why wouldn't we care for our employees? To care for others. And caregiving is something, again, that is all very relatable. All very relatable.
Let's just not forget it. Let's not sweep it underneath the rug. Because as we have fewer kids running behind us during work meetings and sitting on our lap, or the dog barking, that's going to happen less and less and less and less and less.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we're going to forget. But I know I am playing the same note over and over again on that one.
That's okay. Let me ask you a question about unconditional. So you were very vulnerable in that film. You shared a lot. Like, it would be hard for me to let somebody in our house. I'd be like, okay, here's mom. Here's my relationship with mom. One of my favorite parts was when you had the name badge on and you said, I'm your son, Richard. And it still gets me when you said it, because I was like, I know there will come that day with our mom at some point, but that was a beautiful moment. But you really shared a lot in that film. Was Sky Blossoms is that the stepping stone? And you said, okay, let's do this again. I'm going to tell more.
Yeah. Sky Blossom was the one, for the reason I described earlier, what I thought could get the most market traction. But Unconditional seems to be doing just as well or slightly better in terms of market traction, which I'm surprised. Unconditional was the one where, of the two, I was more of, we're going to do this. We ought to talk about mental health in its different gray spaces,
right?
As opposed to this or that. Because it's always like you're either totally healthy or you're screaming at the sky, mad at the world, and you're mentally ill. And mental, as I know, the three of you talk about, because you have that expertise in the family of mental health discussions, is that it's not that. So I think the second one was, I'm going to go for it. And if it turns out that it doesn't work out well, that's okay. I was very much open to that. It was not going to gather the interest that we've had so far. And I am very surprised. I did not want it to be about me. And in fact, when it's a 7-year project that just came out this year, and 2 years of editing. And I was just talking to one of my mentors who was the executive producer on it. And I was like, I 2 years of editing, I felt like so guilty. We spent so long on that. And she said, no, 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 no. Some people spend 10 years. It was the right time. And I said, I guess you're right, because all of our edit sessions were like this. The editor would go, well, Richard, why did you say that? Or why do you want to keep that thing about Amy in? And why is it that you want to have animation during Amy? What are you trying to get at? And there's some dynamics that were second, third, fourth level down that I knew when we were talking about the gray space and the layers of mental health and caregiving, it needed to be shown. If you don't see it the first time, you see it the second time, maybe the third time. And what I loved about Amy, who is a big fan of your podcast, I hear, is that she so well articulated those layers. And so the second film, Unconditional, was focused on going for what was the most difficult to tell. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But not like I was going to say, oh, whatever it is, I'm just going to throw it over the fence and there it is. You got it. No, we were truly trying to take one of the most difficult topics, caregiving and mental health, smash it into the same documentary and provide a nuance, a conversation piece that I hope people would walk away from and talk about it. So, like with Natalie ducking out right now. Oh, she's back. I'm joking. when Natalie said her husband did not want to see it, right? That's okay, because we wanted to be as transparent as we could in the process. And the vulnerability of each of the families was expressed in different ways. Like the editors were saying to me, JJ, that I was like, you need to give more. It's like, I'm trying. I'm really trying to be as just honest as I can be. I'm a correspondent news anchor, so I am kind of like built to be certain ways when I get in front of a camera thing with a light on. And the others with Amy, my sister, with the Bouchat's family, with the Thomases as well, I think we all reflected a part of that conversation in a different way. Yeah. And I am so hopeful that more people say, I felt seen. And that is the one thing that really hit me in the heart in a good way, JJ, is that when we first played it on MSNBC, and it's already been in theaters, and I thought, when it plays on cable, it's just going to, it may not do so well because, there's advertisements in between. But we had an overwhelming response of, I felt seen. I had been a caregiver for years, and I really felt like that was me. And I knew what they were saying. And they were saying it was an aha moment for themselves, that they felt hugged, right?
Yeah.
That's what we wanted. And as my mom as a school teacher would say, if you reach one in the class, you succeeded. So
I love that.
I think we've reached one or two, and I'm so grateful for all that have given, all that have donated time and have allowed us to. I'm thankful for my network for putting it on. Mm-hmm. It's a funny movie. I mean, it doesn't fit what you put on TV.
No, not really.
No. Well, it's reached 3. So your mom, the odds, you could tell her the ratios are up because you definitely reached 3 right here. So,
and I think that's the other thing. I know we've got to do sister questions, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing is that even though they were military families, the military is just a piece of the whole, and and so the relatability, and that's what we strive for. You can see yourself. I saw myself in Amy.
Yeah.
I saw myself in Amy more than anyone. And God bless that. We're so excited to get to chat with her. So anyway, Jay.
Is it time for our sister question?
I think it's time for sister.
I know
questions.
Richard's got to, eventually we got to let people go to work.
I think Richard works. So hey, whatever.
So I'm going to jump first and then we'll let Emily go next because we know we're almost out of time. Richard, what's next? Because I can hardly wait. Are you, I mean, what's next?
If you need 3 sisters.
I we do. Yeah. Preferably with a last name starting with an E.
Oh.
The film was going to be shown at the United Nations at the in October, at the end of October, for their first ever International Day of Care celebration.
Oh,
And then it's going to be played at the European Parliament. It's going to go back to the U.S. Capitol at Congress again. And we are very excited because, as you know, this is about impact and telling people it's an important and valuable thing to do. So that's what's next. And we're very excited about that.
Oh, well, we will absolutely share. So,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Emily?
yes, Richard, it's about to get personal. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready. I hear you were talking going back from work, being a caregiver. It seems like you're putting on so many capes. And I know as a caregiver myself, I had a hard time transitioning into different positions per se. Like, how did that affect you personally? Were you even able to hold a relationship with anyone, or like, how did you transition?
Oh no, she went on mute. How did you do it? How did you get through it?
Oh, there, she's back. Oh, you're back on mute again. Try again. Oh, you're on mute, Emily.
The host keeps muting me. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So how did you transition between those roles? I
think I had two different relationships during that period. And I'm for sure it probably pulled in too many ways, and it has throughout, put me in very stressful situations. And they were the current one, and she and I have been together for like 4 years, and we lived together during COVID, which is like, I don't know how you did it.
right.
In a 400 square foot apartment.
God bless you.
And she understood the caregiving journey, and she'd always say, "You used to cry a lot more. Why are you crying?" And I was like, "Well, I still cry. It's not like I stopped." But that was a sort of openness we had. We could be out having a dinner or after dinner drink or whatever, or out somewhere, and she knows I can get very tied into the beautiful emotion of other people and humanity. But it did push it, I'm sure, Emily, along the way. And I don't know. I did have one situation where my dad was going into the hospital, and it was one of those big deals. And I was on a vacation. And I knew that there was a risk that I could get a call and I'd have to leave. And I got a call and I had to leave. And that was very uncomfortable because we were celebrating her birthday at the time. And, but I had to leave. And it did cause stress. She was also very giving, but I understand everybody has their limit of giving. And so are there ramifications? Yeah, personally, for sure. And would have I done it any differently in terms of going to see my dad? I wouldn't. I tried to prepare in advance of that, actually, before we had gone on that little vacation, which wasn't too far. It was 3 hours out of New York, but I had to go. And I am completely understanding and forgiving of the fact. Forgiving is the wrong word. Completely understanding that she was very upset that I had to take off. Completely, like, come on! And we've been planning this forever, and now you're getting on a plane, leaving me alone on the birthday date.
Yeah.
But all three of you have had that situation where similar situations. You have to go. You're running towards that fire. You better run.
Exactly. Okay. Last question, and it's fast. Are you ready for it? Because it's my favorite. What's your favorite guilty pleasure? What is the thing that you do just for yourself?
I know it sounds really lame, but
it's Popeye's chicken, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's a daily thing. Every other day. I just love YouTubing, like, eating, cooking things.
Oh yeah.
And it started, like if you've got a series where you're in a restaurant with just watching a a restaurant open and the way they prepare, and it's like no commentary, like they just have a camera. Like I've been watching those lately. And I think it has to do with, I wasn't necessarily a good cooker until I had to start cooking for my mom and dad. And then I started to say, okay, well, this. How many of your moms here?
Just the baby.
Just the baby. So baby mom knows this because you get whatever's in the fridge, you're making that day.
Yeah.
The kids are hungry. And for my mom and my dad's like, what's in the fridge? I got 15 minutes to do this. And not that you wouldn't know JJ and Natalie at all. I'm just saying that's why I think I have an interest in cooking all of a sudden because I had to start to try to make something that they'd like that I didn't cook. And in the film you'll see I was really horrible. I mean, I was making was I making turnip soup like Natalie? I was making turnip soup.
Yeah, we saw it. We saw it, Richard. That's a bad confession. Turnip soup.
The only thing I could do, the blessing is it was silver lining was I was in New York City and I ordered every meal out. So Richard, I'm going to tell you, because you have to go, because we respect you, but you do have to go. Thank you so much for being here with us. You are so wonderful. You give so much of yourself, and whatever we can do to support your efforts, we are always here for you. So thank you for being with us. We appreciate you.
It's been a great conversation. Go Elliott Sisters.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Thanks. Until we confess again, guys. Thank you.